I'm a senior in college at the moment. This happened during last semester in the fall. Like most college kids, I use Snapchat to communicate with the majority of my friends, and I've used it for many years. I don't really get added by people that much unless I know them in person, so around the beginning of last semester when I started getting added by people a lot, I thought it was strange. It didn't take me long at all to figure out that the people adding me were bots. I would get added by a bot roughly once a week, sometimes multiple times in a week. They would always be a female, and oftentimes would send me some sort of spam chat message or something like that. When this happened, I would always just ignore it and would never add them back or anything like that. One day, I got added by another account with a female name. I looked at the account to see that it was more than likely another spam account. I didn't recognize the name, and the user didn't have a snap score when I looked. After that, I deleted them and moved on. But a short time later, I received a Snapchat from them. It was a text message, and I expected it to be another spam message, but when I clicked on the chat, it was pretty threatening. They said something like I better watch my back, and I was in trouble. They also said they were going to get me. This actually got me to respond. I asked who this was and why they said that. They only responded to say basically the same thing, but in all caps. I was kind of creeped out by this. I was a pretty quiet guy and didn't really have that many friends at college, but the friends that I did have were very close, and I knew they wouldn't do something like that to me. But still, I decided to ask any of them if they knew anything about it. They all told me no, and didn't seem to know why I was getting these messages. The next day, I got another threatening and cryptic message. It was just saying basically that I was a bad person and that I was in trouble. I asked who the person was who was sending me this. They didn't respond to me at all, and at that point, I decided to block them. That way, they wouldn't be able to contact me anymore. But later in that day, I saw I was added by another account. This account was another female name. I decided to look up the name, but it came back with no results on all social media sites that I looked it up on. They sent me the same message again, and I immediately blocked the account this time also. After that, I started getting paranoid. Everywhere that I went around campus, I would wonder if I was being watched, or who wanted to get me. When I was in classes, I would wonder if it was another student, or when I was in the cafeteria, I would look around to see if anyone was watching me. I never seemed to get any clues as to why someone was threatening me like this. I didn't get added again for 2 days, but then I was added by another person. This person's name I also didn't recognize, and I got another message from them. At this point, I looked in my settings and was able to change them so that nobody could send me snaps unless I had added them back. This made me feel a little bit better. I did get added by another person the next day, but I never bothered to look after I didn't recognize their name. After this, I figured whoever it was would give up. I didn't get added by anyone else for a while. I was starting to feel better about things, until one day I was added by another user again. When I looked, it was actually a girl who I had in a class with me, and she occasionally talked to me. I added her back, but a short time later, I saw that she had snapped me. When I opened up the message, I could clearly see that it was someone else pretending to be her. Her snap score was very low, and I got another threatening message. I immediately blocked the account. This really creeped me out to know that whoever was threatening me even knew the name of the classmates who I talked to. For the rest of the semester, I was on edge, but I didn't get added by any more people. This semester has gone by fine, and nothing has happened since. I just still wonder who it was, though, and why they were doing it. I'm a 23-year-old female living in a 2-bedroom house with my roommate. I moved into the house last year. My roommate is one of my good friends from college who happened to take a job in the same city as me, which isn't very far from the college we attended together. I would use Snapchat every day and had a pretty large number of friends on there and people who I snapped. I would get added by guys that I didn't know quite a bit. Sometimes I wouldn't know them at all, and other times they would be guys that I went to school with or actually did know in some way. One night last summer, I was in my bedroom just chilling on my laptop when I casually looked at my phone to see a few Snapchat notifications. I saw that somebody had added me named Josh M. I didn't really think that I recognized him, but I wasn't quite sure, so I added him back and then was going to send him a snap asking who he was. But before I could, he beat me to it. He sent me a snap, and I opened it up. It was a picture of about half of his face, and he said, "Hey." He appeared to be in a dark area, and I couldn't tell much detail at all about him other than he was white with darkish hair. I sent him a snap back saying, "Do I know you?" He snapped me back almost immediately saying, "Yes, don't you remember me?" I asked him where I knew him from because I really didn't remember him. He just responded with a snap of his face and no words. I wasn't believing that he knew me at all because after seeing more snaps of his face, he wasn't looking any more familiar. I didn't respond to him, but he sent me another snap a minute later asking me what I was doing. I told him nothing and asked him once again how he knew me. He didn't answer me this time either, and once again sent a blank snap of his face. He wasn't really making any sense, and when I left him unread again, he sent me another snap asking where I was. In that moment, I was happy to remember that I never had my location turned on in Snapchat, so nobody could ever tell where I was. I wanted to know more about this guy, so I clicked on his profile on Snapchat to see his username. But when I did, I noticed that he had his Snapchat location turned on. I then clicked on the map to see where he was and maybe get a better idea of where he was from. But when I did, I couldn't believe my eyes. He appeared to be right outside my house on the street. My heart suddenly started racing. My blinds were covering the windows of my bedroom so I couldn't see out. I decided to slowly walk over to them and carefully look out. I noticed a car parked on the side of the street. It was a little ways away, and I figured this had to be the guy. I then went back on my phone to see that he had snapped me again. I opened it. I could now see that he was in a car. He asked me to stop leaving him on red, and at this point, I sent him a snap asking him where he was right now. I saw he opened the snap right away, but he didn't respond right away like he usually did. I waited several minutes, but he never did reply. I then looked back at the Snapmap, but he was now gone. He had turned his location off. I was afraid he had realized I was onto him and was now hiding. I slowly went back to the window, but when I looked out, the car was now gone. I was terrified. I now had no idea where he was and thought maybe he just parked down the street and was going to try to break into my house or something. I called my roommate to tell her what was going on, but I knew that she was at work and the chances of her picking up were slim. Sure enough, she didn't answer. I quickly went around the house making sure that all of the doors and windows were closed and locked. Thankfully, they all were. I went back into my bedroom and locked the door. I was just hoping that whoever this Josh guy was had actually left and wouldn't come back. About 20 minutes later, I heard a noise coming from my front door area. My heart started to pound even harder than it already was. I knew the door was locked though, so I was just hoping whoever was in there wouldn't try to break in. I got out my phone ready to call the police. Then, I heard the sound of the door opening. I couldn't believe it and I started to freak out, until finally, I heard the voice of my roommate. It was her coming home from work early and not the Josh guy. I was so relieved and went over and told her everything. We were both a little creeped out for the rest of the night, but the Josh guy never came back. The next day, the Josh user had been deleted from Snapchat. I never did find out who he was or why he was seemingly stalking me. A few months ago, my best friend Joe and I got invited to one of our other friends' birthday parties. Unfortunately for me, I had to work that night, and I wasn't able to go. However, afterwards, Joe asked if I'd pick him up, and then he'd buy me food. I said sure, because I was always down for free food. I guess they had the party at a bar downtown in the major city that we live near. I was kind of bummed that I had to work, because as I was at work, I saw a few Snapchat stories of some of my friends, and it looked like a pretty good time. When I finally got off of work at about 10:30 p.m., I got a Snapchat from Joe saying he was ready for me to come pick him up. We mainly communicated through the text chat on Snapchat. I told him that I was on the way and asked him where to pick him up from. He then sent me his location on the Snapmap, and I could tell the general area where it was. I asked him for a specific address, but he just said to follow his Snapchat location. This made it a little bit harder with no address, but I could still do it. I drove to the area, which was about 15 minutes from where I was. I got to where Joe was on the Snapmap, but it was in what appeared to be a back alley behind several businesses. It didn't really look like bars though, just more like warehouse or apartments or something like that. I told Joe I was there, and he said he would be out in a minute. Then he sent me a snap saying he couldn't find me and asked me to get out of my car. I was wondering what Joe's problem was because I thought he was acting really strange. I parked my car and got out. I wasn't intending on being out of my car for long, just enough to call out for Joe to see if I could see where he was. But what happened instead was I saw 3 men start to run out from the building that I was next to. They were running straight for me. I quickly got back inside of my car and locked the door before the men reached me. Thankfully, I hadn't gone more than 2 steps from my car, or I wouldn't have made it back. I had no idea who these men were, but they were now trying to open my doors and all shouting at me. I sped away as fast as I could and drove all the way home. I contacted a few of my other friends who had been with Joe that night, and it was told to me that Joe had lost his phone at the bar earlier. I realized someone must have took it, and was now pretending to be Joe and communicating with his contacts. I went to the police and told them everything. Joe's phone was found cracked and in a dumpster a week later. Joe was able to get a new phone, but I don't think they ever found out who the men were who took it and chased after me.